Right, hello. I'll try and improve the lighting a bit, actually. There we go, that's a bit better. So, yes, if people were wondering how I was getting those super high doses, it's from this thing. It's obviously not plugged in at the moment. I will never be, if I'm in here at least, be doing a stream and using this because it's just simply not safe to do that. But, yes, what we have here is the doomsday camera, essentially. I mean, whether or not it's really a camera, I don't know. I mean, what it essentially is. All right, Dan. All right, Chadiversity. What it basically is, obviously, is an X-ray gun. That's in reality what it is. It's not a camera. I don't think it takes film, because I think you're meant to put the film behind the subject. But essentially, yeah, did you see my video on it, Utmost Geek? It's made to look child friendly. It gives out 500 Ronken an hour. Yeah, they do these in like bright pink as well. Apparently they do them to make them, nicer for kids. But yes, it's an X-ray gun. I would say it's a cancer death ray machine, basically. So I'll be doing a proper video on this soon, or I'll do a full-length video talking about it. And basically what I'm going to say in the video is, I certainly would not recommend you ever have this for a dental X-ray, like what they apparently advertise them for. But it's actually very good if you want to test your Geiger counters out, or your dosimeters. And if it's one that maxes out at 500 Rontgen, well, you can make it max out at 500 Rontgen. Interestingly, Stug, with a Polaroid, you can have this take a picture, and then not take a picture, you can have this blast X-rays out. You can get a Polaroid, take a picture from behind the subject, and you would see the skeleton. Well, that's for antics, so I'm not using it in this room. Where the room I use it in, how I do it basically is it was at the end of that corridor. That corridor, if nobody's in the room behind it, that's like, a load of free space. So what I did when I was doing the videos testing it was I had this on its tripod. I put the meters I wanted to test on the stool in front of the tripod. And then basically activated it from as far away as possible with a dosimeter on me so I could check the dose I'm getting. And did that. But yes, right. So my theory is of this, I'll talk about this more in the video, but my theory is that this isn't actually a proper X-ray tube for dental X-rays. I reckon it's like one of those really high dose structural analysis X-ray tubes that, designed to basically like see through concrete and stuff for that, for building type work. But yes, I would never want a dental X-ray done with this thing. If you have a couple of seconds of exposure, you're going to get 1 to 2 millisieverts of radiation. So basically, one photo, if you like, with this pointed at your face, is going to give you your annual dose of radiation for a year. Right, Chadiversity, very easy to answer that. It gives off 500 plus Rontgen per hour. I mean, some of that is quite weak X-rays. It wouldn't get much further past the skin, but let's just use 500 an hour as the dose from it. So you'd need 100 Rontgen roughly to get radiation sickness. Depends on the size of the person. There's a few factors. But if we assume in an hour it gives off 500, then what, 15 minutes maybe? It's hard to say. So if you've not seen the video I did on the 2 videos I did on this as a shorts, watch those. I'll explain what this is. Well, this is like a little Chernobyl, basically. It's obviously this isn't Chernobyl; it's an X-ray gun essentially. But yes, if you were exposed to this for long enough, you would die like the people did in Chernobyl. Yes, because it shoots you through X-rays, do the same thing as gamma rays to the body. Yeah, Alexei, it depends how you look at it. If you get this for the intended purpose of doing dental X-rays, it will kill the operator and it will seriously injure the people, you're X-raying with it. However, if you were buying it to test doomsday dosimeters at a safe distance where you or nobody else or any animals are close to it, it's perfectly fine. But it's not good for the reason it's meant to be used. That's the, I'm all right, thank you, Sam. But yes, so it gives off horrifying amounts of X-rays is the answer to the sort of thing where people are asking about it. And as far as I'm aware, it doesn't actually have film in it or anything like that. You know, from what I can tell, I'll open up the casing at some point and have a look at what's inside there. But you know, like I said, I'm never using this button again. I'm definitely setting it off via the remote control, or you know, the like thing you can put on a lead, so you can. If you didn't see the video on it, planes, and all right, Vladimir, 500 plus Rontgen per hour. Although a lot of those are quite soft X-rays, which penetrate stuff that can read beta. If you wanted something that's equivalent to fairly hard X-rays, you know, in the sense of stuff that only measures gamma would read it, 200 Rontgen roughly, I'd say. Maybe 100 to 200 Rontgen per hour. But in terms of total X-ray dose, 500 plus Rontgen. And yeah, so I can't actually measure it. My meter's max out. You don't need to put this in a lead box for antics. It's not radioactive now. It's not like having a check source. This is a device that only creates, you know, radiation when it has energy going through it. You plug it into the wall socket. Yeah, Vladimir, you've got to love Chineseium, haven't you? They literally fucking lie on the AliExpress page saying this gives you like a 10 microgray dose. No, it doesn't. I've tested it. It doesn't. You know, but oh well. So I'll put that down now because I don't want to keep holding on to that. Like I said, it's not radioactive as it is, but you know, it weighs quite a lot because it's a bulky, basically high voltage circuitry type thing. Well, what you would see, Alpha Industries, is a lot of scintillation on the camera. So you see all those white dots flashing everywhere, like in the video I did. In terms of, you could see the dose go up in real time, yes, but you'd have to keep triggering the camera, you know, like shot after shot. I'll get rid of people who are making weird comments. Yeah, that's basically, if you were a dentist and you were using it every day, I'm Alfie, it would kill you because there's no like back shielding in it. When I first tested it, it set like a Geiger counter off I had in a completely different direction because obviously the X-rays just scatter everywhere. That the majority come out the front, but you know, X-rays come out everywhere. Umbro apparently is still around, yes. I could try that, Rich. The thing is with the Chernobyl counters, I think that supposedly burned out, is I think they were probably like, it's hard to say, they probably weren't ones built to like a military standard. Because obviously like Soviet DP5 meters don't burn out easily. Like max out at 200 Rontgen, and basically just stick at 200 Rontgen. Alpha Industry, if it was only $100 Canadian and it literally includes all the stuff you need to get it to work, yes. Obviously, if it's just an X-ray tube on its own, you're not going to be able to do much of it without a high voltage power supply. Well, some of them are LX Saint, but a lot of them just scatter everywhere. I mean, it's pretty difficult to completely focus X-rays in the sense without spending loads of money when you're developing it, because basically X-rays are essentially like light. So while can focus them to a degree, especially with like the shape of the vacuum tube they're in and everything like that, only the very, very expensive, well-built equipment's going to focus them to a good degree. You're going to get a lot of scatter. Because if you basically just imagine X-rays, what they are, light that penetrates stuff that regular visible light can't. So, you know, obviously, with where I've got like a light here, you put your hand in it, look, it blocks the light. If you, you know, with an X-ray, it goes through your hand. That's why you see the bones, because it basically, you know. And the crazy thing is dental X-rays are not meant to be high dose, because the point is that your gums are relatively thin bits of flesh. You don't need a high dosage of radiation to make them show up. Oh, perfectly legal to own planes. I wouldn't have one. Apparently, British dentists were being told to get rid of them because, you know, if you went to the dentist, they could literally be killing you with it. But yep, well, exactly. Personally, I'm afraid I won't know how to say your name if it's in Cyrillic. But yes, it depends on the type of X-ray tube being used. But yeah, in most hospitals, the X-ray technician is behind glass, aren't they? Or they're in a lead room or whatever. They're not right next to you when they take an X-ray. I mean, I actually know a radiologist, and she said that, you know, with some of the really good modern stuff that some hospitals have, you don't have to worry much about scattering. So, you know, you have they just sit at like a computer on the other side of the room, and that's obviously inverse square law. You know, like having a dose for like 1 second to get a picture, that's fine. I'm sure you'll like it, Sam. Which did you get, the A or the E? Obviously, bear in mind the A does not amplify light to a big degree. It's more for seeing infrared. Well, you're being paid on furlough, basically, if you had a job that you're not allowed to do. But if you've got a depends how a tomahawk's being used, but it worked fine for Native Americans and quite a lot of other cultures. But yeah, the point is with that, if you get one and are very sensible with it, it's a really good tool for testing meters out and like dosimeter pens. It's actually safer, I'd say, in some ways than check sources, because when it's not plugged in, it can't give off radiation. However, like I said, if you're buying it for its intended use, then no, not at all. It's not safe. Let me just close a few things in the background, because I generally have the problem where sometimes when I'm streaming, stuff in the background starts interfering with the internet connection. So if I close like stuff, you know, that might end up starting downloads. Marcus, you're going to need a pretty thick lead apron for something like that. Judging by how much it penetrates, I am using the logic of I'm going to stand on the opposite side of a corridor when I test it. If the camera was on, oof, the webcam would literally be strobing with literal white flashes. It's definitely off. It's not plugged in, because the camera connects to a high voltage power supply, and then that plugs into the wall. So at the moment, I've got the camera unplugged from the power supply, and the power supply isn't plugged in, and it's over there. So yeah. No, I've never played Squad. It's a bit like Armour, isn't Squad? But yeah, Marcus, how I've been doing it that's been pretty safe is I just basically set it off at a distance so the camera zoomed in about 30 times. All right, radioactive goldfish. And yes, it is, isn't it? Especially because it's advertised as being a minimal radiation level. No, it's not. I mean, you know, in the Chernobyl series, when Shabina says, I heard it's the equivalent of a chest x-ray. Well, I mean, I suppose with that, you could say Chernobyl was the equivalent of a dental x-ray if you're using one of those, because, yeah, that's 500 plus Rontgen an hour. But, yeah. So I found a BBC article on these from 12 years ago, I think it was, literally like over 10 years ago, where they were saying how dangerous these things were. Apparently it's still not stopping, you know, China mass producing and exporting them everywhere. Or saying like, oh, it won't damage you if you get it in your eye, radioactive goldfish, saying stuff like that. I hope you're not being threatening of that, Vrantix, but I'm not doing anything illegal, so why would I worry about it? Because like I said, I've had people literally call the police on me before here because, you know, they want to get me done. And I don't get done because nothing I have is illegal. I wouldn't be so fucking stupid to buy something illegal and show it on screen. I didn't delete your message, Alex Saint. Sure it wasn't. But the point is, Vrantix, that read up what the laws are in your country and then don't break the laws. Especially don't break the laws if you make YouTube videos. Basically, the UK seems to have very little laws on X-ray type gear. The main thing is don't be an idiot with it. Like, if I was going up to people and go, oh, can I take your picture? Then you need to get fucking done. And then yes, because you're irradiating people. Yeah, because somebody who came on the channel a lot reported me to the police in the hope they'd shoot me. Right? They wanted to get me swatted. And the cop was just really nice and friendly, you know, realized their time was being wasted. You know, and that was the end of it. But basically, the cop just wanted to know, oh, with your radioactive stuff, do you keep it safely? Yeah, I keep it in ammo crates and I put lead flashing in them. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you know. I didn't see any comment come up about that, Alex Saint, but what do you mean, the egg basket type thing of, yeah, protecting your balls with lead? I mean, I don't blame them, but the Chernobyl levels of radiation, lead isn't going to do much. No, I didn't get swatted, Ari, because the actual cop, you know, in the UK, right, you don't really get swatting in a sense, because if somebody calls the cops out on you, right, they're not going to randomly bust into a house with a firearms team. They'll basically just knock on your door and check everything's okay. So that's what this was. And the cop said I didn't even have to talk to him if I didn't want to. Well, I didn't have anything to hide. So, and when he asked me how many Geiger counters I had and I started listing them, he's like, yeah, I don't know enough. The reason I have this stuff is because I find it interesting. And, it's kind of like educational content, isn't it? But, unfortunately, some people literally like, oh, I don't like somebody's opinion on the internet, so I hope they die. Vladimir, this during Corona, so you couldn't do anything like that. But yeah, he was all right. Like I said, the nice thing was he was actually a proper CBRN officer. So they're trained to know about this stuff. So it's not like somebody who doesn't know and then goes, oh, radiation scary. It's basically, oh, you bought something that's completely legal and you're storing it safely. Okay. Yeah, like I said, not all cops are nice. You just have to hope, really, if you have to deal with the police, you deal with good policemen. Yeah, exactly, do something. I'm not turning into David Han. I do not want to make a neutron reactor. Like, the thing is, the reason I like that more than my check sources, just because of the fact there is no risk of contamination. X-rays are a lot safer in that regard. This thing cannot work if it's not plugged in. And maybe by doing videos on it, I will stop some people buying it who would have bought it and then end up irradiating themselves if they realize how high the dose is. Well, after COVID, LX saying I would love to do a video like that because, I wanted to do that back in 2020. And obviously, that didn't end up happening due to COVID. I'm UK firearms and air guns. Unfortunately, I'm medically unfit to serve, even if I wanted to. I've got about 3 different things with me that all put me on that list. Asthmatic, autistic, and ulcerative colitis. Well, nothing that breaks the law, Shin. I've got stuff like radium dials and that, but they're not really highly... Well, they are radioactive, but it depends what you mean by highly radioactive. But if you mean like Chernobyl, kind of like cesium or cobalt, something that will kill you in seconds to minutes of like being in contact with it, then no, because you can't legally own that, and I wouldn't want to own it because of how dangerous the dose is. It was during COVID, Vladimir. I think it was about April. It was either April or May, and the UK went into lockdown at some point in March. So it was the first COVID bit. Right, Radioactive Maniac? Right, because you've come on, this will never get used on the stream like this because of the safety reasons. But yes, this is this. So it's called Tianji Dental or something. That's the name on the front. But yes, it is a bright blue camera thing, which is essentially just a horrifying X-ray gun. Oh yeah, go for it, Stug. Yeah, Marcus, I mean, it's a problem in lots of places, isn't it, that? But in general, that's why I'm more kind of libertarian when it comes to a lot of laws like that. I'm just kind of the opinion, if people aren't harming anybody else, I really don't care. That's the same thing. I don't care if people are gay. I don't care if people are straight, It's just literally, as long as you don't harm other people, then I really couldn't care less. It's that kind of thing. Yeah, do something. What I've got on order is one of those intensifying screens that, has got the kind of phosphorus powder on, whatever they are. So when X-rays hit them, you can get the X-ray shadows. Yeah, it's just because of the stupid housing on it, the reason it looks harmless. In reality, what it essentially just is a high-powered X-ray tube. I don't know yet, Vladimir. I'll open it up and see if I can find out at some point. But what I think it is, Vladimir, if you didn't hear earlier, I reckon they've put a structural kind of X-raying tube in it. It runs on about a 30 kV power supply, so it's quite high dosage for the power going in. But, I mean, the most you can see of the X-ray tube, if I just get this, without opening it up, is if I take that plastic cover off, that's really all you can see of the X-ray tube there. Just essentially is a bit of metal, the visible bit. So, yeah, I reckon it's going to be a structural integrity kind of X-ray tube, because they're the general smaller ones. Because I know you can buy like the old Soviet ones on eBay for not very much, and they're generally like that big. They're more of like a traditional vacuum tube valve sort of size, as opposed to the giant sort of hospital-sized ones. Yeah, I will try that at some point, Radiac Maniac. But as I said, when I'm doing stuff with this, I'm being super careful with it, you know, just because of the fact that with doses like this, you really can't mess about with this sort of stuff. So how I'm using it is basically using it at the end of a corridor where nobody else is in the house. So I'm the only person who's going to get irradiated. I've got dosimeters on me to check my dose, and I'm setting it off at a distance with the camera zoomed in. I think they did something like that, LX Saint, but I don't know if they did it in all areas of the exclusion zone. They definitely buried topsoil in lots of areas of the exclusion zone. I think there's bits of the red forest, aren't there, that's still highly radioactive. Yeah, I definitely want to do that, Alpha Industries, because I think some of the really big filters would be interesting with that, you know, like the coffee can style filters, especially if you can see the different things in them. Marcus, personally, I would not want to stand close to it. In theory, like if you had some sort of lead apron and some sort of really heavy ballistic mask on, you might massively cut your dose down, but the safest thing due to inverse square law is just to not be close to it. Because if I wanted to CT Ranger, yes, but I don't want to do that with it, because it would be less, oh, look, here's a cool X-ray of me, and it would be more, oh, I'm now vomiting and have diarrhea and I can taste metal. What does that mean, Vladimir? Let me Google it. I don't know what deracivization means. Oh, extermination of rats. Well, I definitely think you could use it to kill probably bacteria, couldn't you, and viruses. Like, you could probably put your shopping in front of it and blast them with X-rays to kill corona on them. Because obviously, oh, thank you, Stug. I really appreciate that, Stug. Stug just gave me a donation on coffee. So he gave me £10. I really appreciate that, Stug. Thank you. But yeah, you could certainly use it to kill bacteria and things, because you do get food irradiation. A lot of people, I guess, don't know how that works. So you get like a massive bit of cobalt or cesium, and the food just goes on a conveyor belt past it. And basically, because it gets blasted with radiation, it just kills any like bacteria or viruses on it. I'll have to try it on the 715 Radiac Maniac, because I'm using it on the 720. The 720 has the beta shield at the back, and I had that open, meaning the metal's thinner. If I did it with the shield closed, I think it would probably be more like 100 Rontgen, 150 Rontgen. But with that open, obviously, the less penetrating rays still manage to get in. It was meant to be a railway bridge, wasn't it, LX Saint? Although I heard that's a debatable thing. Oh, and thank you, Vrantix, as well. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ko-fi is quite good. For those of you that don't know, so thank you both to Stug and Brantix, because people can always do a super chat, but some people can't do super chats, but they can use coffee, or whatever it's called, Ko-fi coffee, and Ko-fi doesn't take anywhere near as much as YouTube super chats take. Well, you'd need a power supply for it. I'm Alfie, that's the problem. But unlike, say, cesium or cobalt or any like the regular radionuclides, you need this to be powered. X-rays are pretty inefficient in terms of power usage to X-ray output. I think it's meant to be, isn't it, something like 98% of something like X-ray tubes output is just light and heat, you know, like the visible light spectrum. Is only like the 1 or 2% that ends up being the actual ionizing radiation that comes out. I haven't got a CDV 717. I mean, the cool thing of the 717 is you could actually put the ion chamber on its lead, couldn't you? Like how this thing was meant to be used. You could put the ion chamber on the lead right next to the X-ray thing, and then you could have the device all the way over the other side of the corridor, so you don't have to zoom the camera in so much. High levels of radiation, Alex, saying definitely mess with electronics and things. See your planes if you're off. Doesn't surprise me, Vladimir. I know it's used by a lot of things, but it makes a lot of sense if you've got the infrastructure to have that set up because of how clean it is in that sense. Anyway, yeah, I mean, you could, if you watched the video from the other day, you literally can see all the flashes on the camera from the X-ray messing with the thing. So yes, I mean, I don't know how high a level of radiation would have to be on different electronics. I guess it depends how thick the metal is around them, how well built the electronics are. But with Geiger counters, right, there's a phenomenon with Geiger counters where if they receive enough radiation, they literally just go to zero because the tubes become so oversaturated they overload. Well, Josh, I think most people for Corona will just need literally a little mask on. Yeah, so it's either NATO or it's either NATO or 40mm DIN. It's certainly not GOST. Yeah, they do, Alex. They either do it with X-rays or gamma rays. So you can either have an X-ray machine doing it, or what's cheaper is basically if they have a lump of cobalt, say cobalt 60, it's in a shielded area, so people don't come too close to it. You've got your conveyor belt or whatever. The conveyor belt goes at a set speed. You know, the cobalt, whatever's unshielded near that conveyor belt, you know, it blasts basically high levels of ionizing radiation, and every 30 years or whatever you swap out the cobalt. Find one on what on YouTube? Sorry, UK Firearms. Oh, survive to fight. Yeah, I know that one. That shows you how to take a poo in an NBC suit, doesn't it? But yes, radiation is not a nice way to go. That said, I've got all the sort of dosimeter kind of gear, all the meters. Like, I do not stand next to this and play with it. You know, there's videos you can find on YouTube of people literally holding stuff in their hand, you know, which is highly, highly radioactive. And you're like, no, 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 don't do that. But yeah, as Inductive Tea Cake says, yeah, I think pretty much, because didn't Japan have the same problem with Fukushima, that they couldn't actually send like drone type robots in to clean up a lot of the stuff because the worst areas would just basically make the robot shut down? Oh, and somebody else has just supported me on coffee. Thank you, Sam. Let's see. It says Sam has given me £5. Thank you very much. It's I think it's a double-edged thing, Duke, because there's some stuff that's good in the UK with how they've dealt with Corona, and there's other stuff that isn't. But I know people who literally lost their job because the government said they wouldn't extend furlough or didn't offer furlough to certain industries. And then when those people lost their jobs, they now can't get employment support. So they've basically been made unemployed by the government. Right. It depends what radiation means. You mean ionizing radiation? The best way of protecting yourself from ionizing radiation is just not being near it, is a simple thing. Yeah, I don't need to do that personally, Vladimir, but I suppose if you don't want to hit it with a hammer or throw it into a fire, that might be a good way of doing it, like you say, or chucking it in a microwave. Imagine microwaving it would work quite well. But well, they did try and use like moon rovers and RC things on the roofs, Shin. But yes, the problem is when you have so much radioactive waste essentially in a small area, the ionization is just going to break the electronics. Because one thing I found interesting is if you put any digital thing with a battery, you know, let's say your mobile phone. If I had my mobile phone and I fully charged it, if I had it in this room, you know, it would last quite a long time before the battery ran out. If I put my mobile phone with the same amount of charge in one of my lead shielded box with some of my radium bits, let's say, I reckon the phone battery would drain a lot faster because I had quite a lot of electronics drain really quickly if you like measure radioactive sources with them. They survived, Alex Saint. I think 2 of them might have died since, but the reason they managed all right, it's kind of surprising, is because there was so much water down there. Water is actually quite efficient at blocking radiation. Yeah, I think they're doing that here in the UK, Stug, and that's annoying, isn't it, if you actually want to pay in money? Because I have that problem sometimes where some of my relatives don't like using credit cards online or whatever. So what they do is they give me the cash for me to buy something for them, you know, using my card. But then I have to go into a bank to pay that cash in. And there's only one local bank near me that still does that. Oh, covertly, I see. I see what you mean there. Yeah, rather than just blowing it up or hitting it with a hammer. That's a Soviet civil defense poster. If you're looking at the big one, basically explaining how to measure yourself for a mask, how to fit a mask, sort of thing. There's not sunlight. I've got a bluish LED lamp on, if that's what you're looking at. I quite like this one because you can change the colours on it. So you can have it yellow, blue of different shades. So that's more natural looking like that one. But it's just quite a nice big LED lamp. Yeah, so the thing is, though, there was no way they could have actually done that job and had proper protection, because the problem is with ionizing radiation, when you're in such intense fields of it, there's literally no protection that you could physically wear that would work. Because that's the thing with like bunkers, right? For protecting people from fallout, they have to be significantly far enough underground that the closest bit of fallout landing to them puts enough distance between them and the fallout, therefore the energy dissipates. So it's inverse square law. So for the people who don't know this about radiation, inverse square law is always the best way of protecting yourself from it. Basically, every time you double the distance, you quarter the dose. So let's say 1 centimeter away from that camera, it's 500 Rontgen when it goes off, right? You go to 2 centimeters, and suddenly it's not 500 Rontgen anymore. What's a quarter of 500? 125, is it? Sounds about right. So then it'd be 125 Rontgen, Then you go to 4 centimeters and it's a quarter of that. 8 centimeters, it's a quarter of that. So just standing away from it's the best thing. But the problem is, obviously, if there was a nuclear sort of attack type thing and fallout dust was landing everywhere, you're not really going to be able to get away from it unless you're in a building that's not fallen apart. Yeah, Jeffrey just said 125. As I already said, Shin, yes, I've got literally a metal gun safe that's got ammo boxes with lead flashing inside with just legal samples in them. And the reason I do that is just because it's overcautious. It also means nobody can randomly get in and get the samples. I missed the person asking what the deal was. Oh, he managed to get an S10 for $20, £10. Yes, that is a very good deal. It's cheaper than I've got my cheapest S10 for. My S10, the one I still own, not the one I gave away, that S10 I still own, I think was £15 at a car boot sale. I think it was around that with that satchel and a filter. So that was a really good price. But yeah, you don't normally see masks for that price anymore. Yeah, Vladimir, exactly, inverse square law. Yeah, I know it applies to light. It's just easier to explain like that. But yeah, it's the same reason, isn't it? Why if you have a light bulb, it doesn't light to infinity, or if you've got the easy way of thinking it, if you have a torch or a flashlight, you go out at night. So here we go, good example. Actually, that's an infrared one, so this is a bad example because the webcam can see it, but it doesn't really show up to my eye. But the point is, if you have a flashlight, the further the distance you go from the light, the less it lights up. Normally spreads out more, but it gets weaker and weaker. Hence, a few yards from a flashlight is pretty bright. The further you go, it's dimmer. Imagine just ionizing radiation. It's like that. You can't see it like you can with a flashlight beam. It's pretty much the same logic. The brighter it is, the further it will travel. And there's a few other factors as well. But in general, every time you double the distance, you quarter the dose. Yeah, it'd probably be something like that. Like I said, I don't know exactly how it works with draining electronics. But yeah, I certainly know that I found that, especially dosimeters that have batteries in them that, it's meant to last like 9+ months. If you put them next to a check source for long enough, the batteries do not last that long. What it is, Mr. Scotland, is the regular Mark 6 doesn't have that. The Mark 6A does, because the Mark 6A has Kevlar filler. The Mark 6 regular one was ballistic nylon, which is why the regular Mark 6 is shit. It's good as a hard hat, but it's not good as a combat helmet. I didn't know that, Justin. That's interesting. So it probably applies to a lot of things with physics, does it? But yeah, it's just an easy way. When you understand that, a lot of radiation stuff doesn't seem as scary because you can understand as long as you're not next to it. Nuclear war related channel name: Castle Bravo, Tsar Bomb. Why don't you look up the names of all the atomic tests and the atomic bombs and pick one you like? But I think Castle Bravo is probably my favorite footage of a bomb going off. What do you want it for, Sam? Because if you want to use it on people for doing medical X-ray type things, no. And I mean, I would not be qualified to tell you about that at all. If you're literally doing it for like some sort of X-ray imaging of like parts of something, it would probably be fine. I mean, I've not tested it yet for that because I'm waiting for my phosphor screen to arrive. Because obviously you need, yeah, but obviously you need to bear in mind all the safety applications or something like that as well. Because, you know, ideally the weakest possible X-ray source is the best thing. If you know, because you don't have to be as far away from it and everything. Yeah, the only problem, Max, with a lot of the Sarbon footage is because of how big the yield is. It just makes the cameras white out, doesn't it? It's good to watch it, but sadly, you know, other than the aftermath stuff and them actually flying to drop the huge bomb under the plane, when it goes off, it's just like a big flash. Where some of the lower yield bombs you can actually more easy to capture on camera. Yeah, there's also stuff like Trinity and Beyond Vrantics that's very good as if you want to, and like that the person who did Trinity and Beyond did several other films, but that was the music I put in that thing with the CDV 720 the other day. I think that was when something else. I think it was the George device, not Castle Bravo. The first time the sort of bomb motif plays really loudly. I mean, if they're ripped, not really, other than getting a new lot of straps or. Yep. That's what the clock says. If it's nowhere near a person, these sort of things would probably be fine, Sam. I don't know. There's a version of this camera unit that's cheaper than this one. I don't know what the intensity of that one's like, and I don't know what the intensity of ones are like. I mean, if you're just imaging stuff, this is probably all right, but so I've not done that yet with it. I've just been using it to set off dosimeters. But I'm assuming because of how high the radiation is at close range, it would be fine for imaging purposes of, you know, like electronics or whatever. So yeah, like saying, what is the max dose this gives off? Well, the highest counters I've got go to 500 Rontgen, and at point blank, this goes over 500 Rontgen. So, you know, if anybody gets one of these and has some of the really super high level counters, it'd be interesting to know. But yeah, it's hard to say because obviously, if you factor in harder X-rays, probably about 200 Rontgen because it depends on what material it's going to have to go through as well to get to like your detector as well. The Thermoscientific, Sam, that it made the alarm go off on that when I tested it, and you could see for every second of exposure, I think it was making it go up several microsieverts on the total dose. But because on that thermo one, you have to press the button and then it keeps reverting back to your total dose. I couldn't see what the active dose was because I'm not going to hold it and, you know, hold it in front of it with that sort of dose. It goes up to 16 sieverts, Sam. But yeah, annoyingly, because that doesn't permanently let you display the active dose, I'm not going to stand there and press that. But yeah, it does go to 16 sieverts, that Thermoscientific one I've got, but, you know, I'm not going to be standing in the beam of an X-ray to test it. No, I don't have any Korean gas masks. I imagine it would, Vladimir, if you used it a lot. I think that as I said, I've not pulled this apart, but I think it says something about it being oil cooled on the store page. But then again, they also said it was low radiation doses, and it's not. So I assume it's a case of if you just do it like I was using it, put on a couple of second bursts, you know, and use it to just do a bit of footage for video, it'd be fine. I mean, if you kept doing it over and over and over, I imagine you'd burn it out, yeah. Dyatlov Pass is interesting, Snoz. Interestingly, the reason they were probably irradiated, a lot of the bodies, was probably thorium lamp mantles. Because they would have had thorium lamp mantles in the tents in like their gas lanterns. And obviously, thorium lamp mantles give off radiation when they burn, essentially give out fallout in a sense. Yeah, snake oil called exactly. Yeah, I'll test it with a sake at some point. Inductive tea cake. That might be a good idea. Probably do a live stream tomorrow, in all honesty. But Sam, if you're on about these things, these cameras, they're all over AliExpress. I've seen them on eBay, and I think they sometimes turn up on Amazon as well. Right, the person that's spamming the chat I'll get rid of, because, you know, it ruins the chat for everybody else. Tell you what, sorry, Shin. What do you want to know? Can you go off the color, Nick? Because if it's green, it's a Mark 6. If it's a Mark 6A, it's generally black if you take the cover off. The reason being, I think they did that so they could distinguish what kind of armor was in it, because the Mark 6A was the one that they had to rush out eventually because of the awful performance of the Mark 6. Yeah, it's strong smelling stuff, isn't it, Max? That's why it's good for testing masks. I mean, I definitely prefer banana oil to like the horribly bitter smelling thing that you can also use to test things. Jennifer, we are on about, it's not really a camera, it's called a camera, but I don't think it takes film. I'm on about this horrific X-ray cancer gun thing, essentially, that I've been using to test some dosimeters. But yeah, you can buy them on AliExpress in a lot of places. They call them dental cameras, but they're not cameras because they don't take film. It's just an X-ray emitting device, essentially. They seem to average £300 to £500 or dollars, Sam. Have a look around, because some sellers do them for cheaper than others and some charge more for postage. So just look around, and because they're all the same products, essentially. If you look at all the ones of the same design, just find the seller on AliExpress or whatever that's doing it for the least total price and postage. Oh, interestingly, saying about X-rays, old TVs were horrifying for some of the vacuum tubes used in those. Well, the way I think of it is the old Goosebumps book, Say Cheese and Die, where there's like a Polaroid style photo and there's just skeletons on the photo, because that's essentially what it is, Say Cheese and Die. But yeah, the PD500 is a very interesting tube like that. PD500s were used in old colour televisions as a shunt stabilizer, and I don't know if you can still see that on there. That's mostly faded. It says about caution of X-rays, because PD500s can give out pretty dangerous levels of X-rays even when just working in a television. These apparently killed a lot of TV repairmen back in the day. But it's simply just because if you have high voltage in a vacuum tube, you generally do get a bit of X-ray discharge. And those, they never really designed them to not give out X-rays. You know, they were designed to, apparently, I think it's to do like color image stabilization. They use them on the TVs. I mean, there's no point, Gus, because it's not an instant thing. I wouldn't want to defend myself with it. Let me look at both of them, the Denari. So Scott ProMask FM3, let me look at that one, and I'll tell you what I think of that one. So that's the one that's basically like an M98, isn't it? Does that one take 40mm filters? Yes, it does. Okay, it's a very good mask, because the M98 is good. So I'd like that one. What's the AVEC 90? Let me have a look at that one. I don't think that's coming up with a mask on a search. Oh, is that the OM90? If you mean the OM90 versus the Scott M98, the M98 wins hands down. The OM90 is basically an S10 clone that's not as good as the S10, other than the fact it's got a slightly better voice diaphragm, I think. The problem is I don't know what's on the surplus market for good prices at the moment. Yeah, the Scott M98 or the Pro Mask is way better than, especially if you get the 40mm version. What's a CHE? If you've got anything that detects X-rays, like a Geiger counter or whatever, put a Geiger counter next to it. Some of them are fine. With PD500 tubes, the good manufacturers actually put them in I think it was quite a thick box, like either a steel or a lead box inside the TV. You know, where they could wire them, like have a wire go into the box, a wire go out the box. So, you know, the dose would be pretty minimal. But apparently there were lots of TVs where people, you know, repaired them, didn't put the PD500s back in the box, or some manufacturers didn't, the more voltage that went through the television, the worse the radiation was. There's a guy who's done a pretty good physics blog playing about with them and recording doses. And I think he managed to get it up to several Rontgen per hour, I think, off of one of those tubes, just running it at the proper operating voltages for it. So in theory, if you had a TV that was slightly overvolting it and didn't have the proper protective stuff in there, you could essentially get radiation sickness if you sat in front of the TV for 8 hours a day. I was sent it for free, the M98, but they do turn up on eBay, I think, now and again. You can get the Pro Mask versions from some hardware stores where they're sold not as military masks, but as hardware masks. Yeah, as Vladimir says, yeah, don't throw it away, because CRT TVs are cool. Fazad Gamer says, am I dead? No, you're not, because you've written a comment. I don't think ghosts can type. Yeah, Litter Picker. I mean, there's always stuff, isn't there, of don't sit too close to TV because you'll damage your eyes kind of stuff. But yeah, with old TVs, there actually was a significant risk coming off them. There's some very interesting pages you can find where people have done experiments with these tubes to work out the doses they give off, and like old TV repairman forums where they talk about like how dangerous they now know these things were, you know, and how many repairmen from like the 60s sort of era, you know, ended up getting cancers that weren't like smoking related ones, you know, or drinking related, which makes you think, you know, people will get cancer anyway, but if TV repairmen were getting them at significantly higher rates, it's probably the old shunt triodes doing it. CRT monitors are probably pretty safe. If you mean like computer ones from the 80s and 90s, they'll be pretty safe. Especially if you think more modern CRTs have solid state style hardware in rather than old vacuum tubes to power them. You will get, even with pretty much any CRT, you'll get a very minimal amount of X-rays come out the front. That's why they use leaded glass in the front, because you've got the electron gun, which basically shoots electrons into the screen. And then basically, you know, they stop to display the image on the phosphor screen. So if they're hitting the screen too fast, you will get some X-rays come out the front. That's why they made them generally quite thick leaded glass at the front, because that massively minimizes it. Yeah, my one, I think the person who sent it me for free did have some for sale on eBay. But yeah, other than eBay, I can't really suggest much to you, because that's where I get nearly all my masks. Is it on eBay or, you know, an army surplus type website? If so, then I'll get it from there. What you might be able to do, Jacob, if you want to actually try to set it off, if you get like a Variac kind of power supply, you could try overvolting your TV and then seeing if it gives off some. I mean, obviously that could also break your TV, so you do that at your own risk. Also, if you remove the housing from the CRT, you could try putting the Geiger counter in other bits of the screen, because, you know, potentially it might be that the glass is really thick at the front, but it's not at the sides of the CRT. I don't think the static is caused by X-rays. I think that's just probably because it's not displaying a picture, and it's probably just electrons hitting the screen. But I don't blame you there, Litter Picker. That's a good reason to get close to a screen, isn't it? Well, smoking, it depends if you get anything bad from the smoking. If you smoke for a bit and quit, you might not necessarily get anything bad from smoking, you know, other than a bit of a dry throat, you know, a bit of a cough or whatever. But, I mean, if you get lung cancer, then you can also get lung cancer from, like, you know, inhaling radionuclides or, you know, exposure to radiation. But if you mean dying of acute radiation syndrome, that would probably be a lot worse than lung cancer. Acute radiation syndrome is literally where everything in your body starts failing because your body has just been genetically damaged to the point it doesn't know how to repair itself. And Vladimir has answered you. There we go. He says, static caused by the charge that guides the R part of the CRT. The ray, I assume. Cathode ray tube, so the ray. Yeah. Old radium watches are good for that, aren't they, Jacob? Because some of the old radium watches were horrifyingly doped in radium paint. So yeah, Vaseline glass, uranium glass, Fiesta ware, smoke alarm, bits of the AM241 in them. That's all right, Jude. I'm glad I'm useful. Basically, two-man Sal, obviously radiation doesn't just refer to ionizing radiation, but if you mean ionizing radiation, just limit the amount you're exposed to. That's my best bit of advice. But yeah, some of the compasses and dials are crazy, aren't they, Jacob? I mean, the strongest one I've got is the DP63's radium backplate. But yeah, I know that there's supposedly some dials out there that are even hotter than those in terms of, what they give off. I don't think I'm really smart, in all honesty. I just find this stuff interesting. If you ask me about topics I'm not interested in, I wouldn't be able to give you a very good answer to them. It's just, it will definitely help shield you from some CT Ranger. I've done videos on that before with beta emitters, but if you want at some point, I will set this thing up behind some body armor, especially the ones with plates in, and we'll measure the dose. I'll have to get something like a tape measure out, so I can definitely set the thing off at the same distance every time, because obviously if I'm moving it around between tests, it invalidates it. Yeah, exactly, Jacob. I mean, but not stronger than the DP2's check source, because that is, let's put all of this strontium in it, comrade. Let me look up what that type of valve is, but most valves of high voltage will, valves and vacuum tubes. I mean, some are more efficient than others at it. But essentially, an X-ray tube is just a giant vacuum tube. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about specific ones, but from what I understand, is pretty much if enough high voltage goes through a vacuum tube, it will create X-rays due to. Thank you, Two-Man Sam. Glad you enjoy it, and thank you very much. What started my interest in it? Maybe because my granddad was in the Second World War, and I had a few other relatives serving like military type things. Might be that. I just find it interesting. I mean, I find a lot of history interesting. It's just like medieval stuff you can't collect as easily, just due to the age of it. But like I really like going to castles and stuff like that as well. A lot of the time, it's just kind of being quite spurgy, I guess, and liking to collect stuff, as in hoard it, have too much of it. And sometimes getting stuff when it's not too overpriced. But I find radiation just really interesting. I think just if you like radiation in general, just because of the fact you can't see it, taste it, anything like that, but it can be horrifyingly dangerous. Right, Jacob. I think it really depended on various DP2 models, because my DP2 check source is not as strong as some of the people's online. But yeah, so the EMB3, so that was 10 microcurie, right? I think some people have estimated some of the DP2s had about 1 millicurie of strontium-90 in them. But yeah, bear in mind that people have opened them from the 60s, done videos on Geiger counters, which aren't the best because they're not calibrated generally on strontium-90. But I have seen ones where, yeah, people have literally got about 50 Rontgen per hour off of a 1960 DP2 when they've opened it up and taken a check source out. I can't show on stream tactical because of YouTube's rules. The only two live firearms I've got because of UK laws, and I don't have a Section 1 or Section 2 FAC firearm certificate, I've got a Martini Henry and an 1889 Schmidt Rubin, because they're obsolete calibers, which means as long as you're not shooting them, they're not classed as guns in the UK. It's also a little picker. I think it's being modest, isn't it? But I mean, it depends, because a lot of the people I talk to are also interesting people. It depends, but I do know dumb people, but then they're not the people I generally talk to a lot. But I can certainly think of a lot of people I chat with online who know a lot more about subjects than I do. But I think as you get older, at least as I've got older, I stop pretending that I know a lot. And then it's more, what can you learn, rather than going, actually, I know more than you. You can get Stahlhelms on eBay, but they're pretty overpriced. If you wanted to get a Repro Stahlhelm, they do those on AliExpress, sometimes made from quite good quality steel, for like £50, which isn't too bad. But if you wanted a real Stahlhelm, they're very expensive. I sold a rusty, really crap World War II Stahlhelm not too long ago, and I got 75 quid for it. So £75, I was pretty happy about that, because you know, I sent photos. It was literally a rusty shell of a Stauhelm, and I still got that for it because of people's obsession with the Nazis, essentially. Ah, you mean like one of these, Foster? Yep, you mean one of these. Now, this one needs recharging because it's definitely not been exposed to 500 centigrade. These are very awkward to try and show on camera. But yeah, you mean like one like this, don't you? You can get them in all different dose units, but yeah, the old-fashioned dosimeter pens. I'm a massive fan of these. Like, as much as the modern electric ones, you know, like the digital display type things are a lot more practical. There's something very cool about where you can just do that. I was actually using several of those when I was testing that X-ray thing. I had them, like, you know, all recently charged, all just on my chest so I could check my dosage afterwards, as well as using a digital counter. I've got some CRT TVs in the shed. I mean, all the screens I use now are just like modern ones. I know CRTs are better in terms of refresh rate, aren't they, than like modern screens or whatever it is. But personally, you know, I just kind of like having a HD TV. Do you have the rechargers for them, Jacob? Because obviously you'll need to recharge them to find the needle. Although sometimes you'll have the problem where the quartz fiber's gone kind of a bit off the thing, so you can't actually get on. One of my DKP 50 pens has done that, where unless I dismantle it really carefully and put it back together, the quartz fiber has essentially come off, I think. Because like this DKP 50 is the one that works. Still, both of them used to work, but this is the one that if I can get that where it'll actually see it. Some dosimeter pens are much easier to show on cameras than others. Oh, is that light gone off? That would be why. Yeah, there we go. This is the one where the needle works, but with some of these, the only thing you could try that might not be too invasive is if it's got a bottom like that, try using a screwdriver to turn that around, because sometimes you can get the quartz fiber to rotate inside by doing that. So you can see it, but I've got a deactivated L1A1, if you mean the FN FAL. Yeah, I've got a deac one of those, but you know, you can't have a live one. On a Section 1, if the gas system was taken out and you had to charge it between each shot, you might be able to own it in the UK on the Section 1. But sadly, that was like one of the guns that in the 80s everybody was allowed to own if they had a Section 1. And then after Hungerford, the Hungerford massacre, semi-autos were banned over here. I haven't had anything really spicy in a while, Marcus, but I did have a particular type of Bombay mix not too long ago that was fairly spicy. And I liked it, but then it kept giving me acid reflux problems. Oh, what, like the film badge dosimeters, Max? Yeah, I mean, film badge dosimeters make sense if you've got all the things for processing them. It's just like for somebody like me, a film badge dosimeter doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, in a lot of countries, they just get worse over time, don't they? Because unfortunately, some idiot will do a mass shooting because they're a loser, basically. And then once an idiot does a mass shooting, the government goes, oh, look, we can appease all the people who hate individual rights by taking these things away. The other ones I've got, Max, are this type used, which is an interesting thing. I still need to do a video on this at some point. Oh, I just realized using my radiation gun, I can actually get the readings on this to change. But this was a big British Army vehicle-mounted unit. Let me put that down so you can see. And what this did is you had these wristwatches, basically. Well, they weren't watches, but you know, you think on these wrists that kind of look like wristwatches, and inside them there's a little crystal, and the machine reads the crystal to tell the dose. And I think the idea is that the soldiers won't know how much their dose is, but somebody else can check them. Jacob, with some Geiger counters, if they don't have good enough shielding on them, UV lamps do set them off. But I've only found that on some really cheap and nasty Geigers. I do not have a Chernobyl firefighter helmet. No, where are you looking? There's a riot helmet somewhere in the background. But yeah, so there's some Russian ones like this. I'm trying to remember the name of them. They're like in a metal case and you pull them out like that. But yeah, these ones anyway. These are kind of a lot more precise, but the problem is you can't reset these. So if you buy the surplus ones, where they're still in their foil packets, quite often you find if you put them in the reader, they've already got a dose on just because of background radiation over time. Oh, it's just a badge that changes colour, right? Yeah. I suppose if they're properly made, that shouldn't happen. Speaking of, let me check on... I'll be finishing the stream fairly soon because I've been going for an hour. But let me just check on, while I think to do it, the Polish dosimeter things that change colour. Because I imagine my one will have got more purple since when I last did the video on it. So let me have a look. Yeah, oh, that's getting quite visibly purpley pink now. You can actually see it without putting it in the device, the PK... was it called the something 50? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. That's getting quite purpley now. It's actually harder to see against your skin, but if I think where I can put it where it's darker, because I think these are more obvious that they've changed colour when it's dark. But yeah, that's definitely going more pink. That's because I've just been leaving it next to check sources. I've got another one I've left next to some uranium. What's it called? Like uranium crystals over there. But that's not really changed colour, but they're obviously just like a natural thing and not a radionuclide. PK56, yes, thank you, that's it. But yes, this has definitely gone more pink since last time I looked at it. But the problem is with this, that it's quite hard to get the colour to show up right on camera for these without putting them against the thing. You might be able to see that sort of pinkish there. I mean, I can definitely tell with my eye this is pinkish. And against some surfaces, you can see the colour is more different. There's an Xbox controller there. Will that work? You might be able to see there it's slightly pink, but it doesn't. The webcam doesn't seem to pick up the colour of this very well. But if you put this inside the thing and check it against the zero control source and then use the colour wheel, you can definitely see that this has picked up radiation. You can buy uranium on eBay, Jeffrey. I didn't think I said I had a black shirt on. Did I, Vladimir? I don't know, Sam, because this is the only one I've ever used, and I was surprised how strong it was. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to be buying U235 on eBay, Jeffrey, but you can buy like pitch blend, like raw uranium ore. What else can you buy on there? You can buy like torbanite and autunite, like the really pretty crystals that give off radiation. You can buy all those sort of things on eBay. If you buy from a good seller, they will actually put radiation warnings on it and ship it in a box that's designed so you don't get dust everywhere. But some people just sell this stuff and have no clue that certain like minerals are radioactive naturally. Well, you can't get tritium. I've bought tritium on eBay loads of times. What, are they not meant to sell it on eBay? Or is that eBay in the US or whatever? In the UK, you can buy tritium on eBay. I've never had any issues. I've got one bit of tritium over there somewhere. And what you can get is if you search the file markers, you can buy the quite strong tritium sources that they used to use. I think it was on ships. Oh, what? White to show the pink. I mean, I don't... Will that show up? I mean, I think it's generally against darker colours that you can see it more easily. But again, I think the problem is the webcam. Oh, you can see it's more pink from that angle. There we go. But yeah, the webcam doesn't show the colour as well as my eye can see it. But as said, these are kind of a weird thing, I prefer the dosimeter pens, and they don't change back colour once you've irradiated them. To show the pink, yeah, right. Well done, Little Picker. You've obviously got what Vladimir was on about. But yeah, Well, as I said, these things are a bit weird with sort of cameras picking them up. Can you see how pink it is if I put it in there? Might be a bit too dark for the webcam now, because with my eye, it's more obviously pink inside there, where it's a bit dimmer. But like I said, it's not really important. But yeah, let me just have a look. Jacob, I mean, I don't know where you're based, Jacob, but let's see if I can find you a defile marker, because that's quite a cheap way of buying tritium. It's generally surplus tritium if you buy a defile marker. But here's one for £7 from 1999, and the one I've got from, I think it's a 1999 one, glows quite well still. But yeah, let me just link you to this. This is a UK one, but you can probably find these in other countries. Generally, the newer they are, the more they cost, but that's also because the tritium glows brighter because it's more radioactive, because it's not gone through half-lives. Are you looking at that? That's a Soviet GP7 gas mask on top of some French riot armor. When you say big light source files, do you mean what I've just put a link to, Jacob, or do you mean something else? Or do you mean that sort of thing? But if you mean the tritium ones, they are pretty damn chunky bits of tritium in here. Yeah, it says on the back, doesn't it, what the Curie amount of it is? Oh yeah, it's 10 Curies worth of tritium. There you go. So I think it's 2 Curie bits in there. They're pretty damn big, but obviously the newer ones you buy, they're generally more expensive, but they're brighter. But yeah, the tiny little bit of tritium I've got that's the most modern was one I bought just from, like a camping kind of supplies shop. So if we assume that was within a year of its manufacture when I bought it, that's my brightest one. But I've got quite a few of those old defile markers, and the most modern of those is fairly bright still. That's a shame. I wonder on US eBay, Jacob, if you can find a similar thing. Let's have a look on ebay.com. I don't know if I can search in the UK, though, to only show US results, which is a bit annoying. But if you search the file marker on US eBay, do any come up? If not, that'll be a bit annoying. But you might be able to find something like that in an army surplus somewhere. Yeah, that's why it's kept inside glass, Obrage. How they do it. I bought a bag of the stuff that was filling that, and that definitely gave off a dose. It wasn't super scary, but yeah, you wouldn't want it on a bit of jewelry or whatever on you. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, exactly, litter picker. I think the worst thing is more if somebody had bad intentions with it, isn't it? Or was completely careless with it. Like I said, I lock my stuff when it's not in use in a safe. For the reason of it can't hurt anybody when it's there, and nobody can steal it. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I definitely would not use that sort of thing on any of my friends, even if they're like, "I want you to do an X-ray of me." I'll be like, no, because I don't want it on my conscience of giving somebody else cancer or some sort of genetic damage. I was going to finish it a minute ago, and I've been interested in the subject. But yeah, going on about tritium gas before I go off, how the tritium vials work is essentially they're a glass vial with tritium gas in them. So essentially the gas is trapped in a vial, right? And then the inside of the vial is coated with a fluorescent phosphor. So what happens is the tritium, a bit like old radium with phosphor, the beta rays hit the phosphor, making it light up, and it's stored inside glass, so the gas can't escape. That's how they do them. It's quite a clever design. I mean, it's a lot safer than radium in terms of if you get a big brand new vial with tritium in, I think if you have a very sensitive counter, you might just about get a reading on the outside. But it's pretty damn hard to get a reading on tritium, just because of the fact that it's not really strong enough to penetrate the glass. Normally it's always the evening, Sam. That just works better for me most of the time. So maybe 8 p.m., 9 p.m. UK time. Yeah. The thing is, I probably don't want to buy any more of those, but I have seen a few videos on some of those bullshit health products that are quite dangerous. I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as like the 20s when they literally thought eating radium, shoving radium up your ass was good for you. You know, it's not. Eben Byers, look him up if people don't know who Eben Byers was. He was a golfer who drank Radiofor, which was radioactive water. It was like radium contaminated water, essentially. Like, he thought it was an energy drink. He literally died from his bones disintegrating. It wasn't pleasant. But yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I will do a body armor versus radiation video at some point. Also, for anybody that might be aware, do you know what size battery the remote would use for this? Because I bought an LR1 battery thinking it might have been an LR1, and the LR1 is slightly too big for it, even if you compress that spring. So it's a battery that's probably one size smaller than LR1. Does anybody know the next size down from an LR1 that's also 1.5 volts? I figured out this remote is 1.5 volts because I ran out on my power supply and I kept slowly putting the power up until it started working, and that was 1.5 volts. I doubt there's Chernobyl graphite in museums. If they did have it in a museum, they'd have to have it behind quite thick glass, quite far away from people, because obviously, you know, radionuclides are scary, especially ones from an exploding reactor core. That sounds pretty horrifying. I do like Big Clive's videos. I haven't seen that one. I've seen ones where he talks about thorium lamp mantles and he was testing a little sort of Geiger counter, like an Arduino sort of Geiger. Yeah, but yeah, it's not nice stuff, is it? Especially because there's a lot of people that probably, because there's two ways it's bad. There's the simple way it's bad, that they're literally being scammed, and the even worse way it's bad is it can potentially kill people. You know, obviously, I think scamming people is probably not as bad as killing them, but you know, either way, it's bad. You know, I don't mind if it's legal for you to buy it in your country. If they literally just said, "Here is a thing with thorium in it," then you'd know what it is. But when they are making out with some sort of hippie health bullshit, and it's literally, you know, like uranium or thorium powder in it, it's like, no. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it, Chase? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd probably like to have that in a cabinet somewhere, but also I kind of wouldn't because, you know, depends how radioactive it is. Ionizing massage pen. So I guess that's a rectum irradiator, like what it technically does, litter picker. But A23, I'll check CT range because the problem is some places have different names for different batteries, but A23 batteries did come up. I'll see if I can get a size comparison. A23 battery versus LR1. Let's see if I can get a size comparison. Because what I want to do is just see if I can get like a picture of an A23 next to an LR1, and it looks slightly smaller, then that would be perfect. But yeah, because like I said, I bought these and I thought, oh, it's got to be an LR1, but no, it's slightly smaller than LR1, so it doesn't close the case up if you. But yeah, I'll see if I can get a cheap pack of A23s, and if they don't fit, I can just put them in an adapter and use them for something else. Well, AliExpress just sells lots of Chineseium, which is generally the problem when you literally sell whatever shit you want with almost no regards to what you're selling. Ah, thank you, Vladimir. Right, 28.5 millimeters long. So what I'll need to do is measure this and see if that's less than this one. Because annoyingly, they don't put the length on them, do they? Ah, this is also apparently known as an N battery. So, yeah, I think N batteries are slightly bigger. I'll buy a 23A then. 1.5 volts, Jeffrey. So it's just the standard voltage. It's just it has to be tiny. Right, thank you, Vladimir. I will. Oh yeah, they've literally got the N and the A23 next to each other. So yeah, the one that says E90 on that picture is this type of one by the look of it. And yeah, the A23 is ever so slightly shorter and a bit thinner, isn't it? So it looks like it probably will be an A23. Thank you, Vladimir. So yeah, so it's basically 2 millimeters shorter. I think it's got to be that then. And as you said, is that the diameter actually bigger than 12 millimeter as opposed to 10.3 millimeter? I'll buy some and see if it works. If not, I'll have to figure out maybe getting a very low voltage watch battery and then putting tinfoil around it. Stuart, it's an X-ray camera. It's basically an X-ray gun. If you didn't see the video, it gave out 500 plus Rontgen and maxed a CDV 720 I've got on the shelf there. If you go on a proper guided tour of Chernobyl, Shin, it would be completely safe because they give everybody dosimeters. They take them around the safe bits. They don't say, let's go lick the fireman's boots. But yeah, if you have a look, Stuart, it's basically I'm going to go off now anyway because I've gone over the time I said I was going to do. But what it basically is it's advertised as like a safe, low-dose dental X-ray kind of producer. And it gives out more fucking X-rays than lots of people who build like custom X-ray machines using giant X-ray tubes on over like 100 kilovolt supply. That's weird, CT Ranger. I don't know why, if that suddenly started happening. Maybe it's the internet being weird again. But anyway, thank you to everybody that donated today as well. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you anyway. I'll probably be on tomorrow night, similar sort of time. So have a good evening, everybody, and goodbye.